Hey guys, let's talk about books. January has been a time, and that is why I have not been here on the internet. It has just been back and forth, taking kid to summer camp. We don't have that in Australia, but she did have a thing on over summer, and then back and forth to medical appointments, and then back and forth to the hospital. And it's just not been a time where I have been in a brain space for reading. And so there's been nothing really to tell you about, but also I didn't have the space to be here on YouTube. So it is now February. Let's talk about books. Let's catch up from where we were at the end of January. I tell you, it took me probably half an hour to sort this out before I even hit go on the camera because it's been a while. So anyway, let's talk about books. Last time I talked about a book that I bought called The Ministry of Time on my Kindle. It was a book club pick for January, and I DNF'd that straight away. I had bought it because it was cheap. It was less than $5 in the Kindle store. So I've spent more money than that on terrible coffee that I have subsequently thrown away. So to throw away the book, not that big of a deal. It was not for me. Like I said, I don't like comedy. I don't like romance. I don't like historical fiction with real historical figures in. And that book had all of that. But mainly the reason I DNF'd it is because the only character that I think I was supposed to be gelling with was the dimples of the guy who had been brought through a portal from the past. And so if I'm supposed to fall in love with the dimples, then obviously it's a romance, but also I don't give a shit because dimples don't have a personality, and neither did any of the main characters that I had encountered so far. So I DNF'd at about 10 or 15% and no regrets. But if you like historical fiction and romance and dimples, then by all means pick it up. Then I finished this guy on the 4th of January, which is over a month ago from when I'm recording this. So can I remember what happened? Actually, yes, I can. This is Brandon Sanderson's Wind in Truth, book 5 of the Stormlight Archive. We've talked about it a bit before, and all of the internet has probably given you spoilers if you're interested in spoilers. You can tell I'm feeling better because I'm not having a problem picking this up today. This is ultimately, I had so much fun. I raced through it. I couldn't put it down. Metaphorically, because I read most of it on my Kindle. I was staying up late to read more. It was, that is when you're an adult, the best praise you can give a book, I think. Were there parts where I was bored? Yes, there was a whole section about the law and how this particular world in this particular universe came to be, where the powers of the gods come from, etc. And I had said before that I felt like I hadn't done the homework. There was a lot of this backstory and a lot of these lore elements coming into play in this book that I had kind of just skimmed over in the previous books because it was flavour. And now it was on the exam and I didn't know what we were talking about. And it goes into detail about that in here. And again, I've really just skimmed it. It was flavour. It's important to the story, but I still couldn't tell you the nitty gritty of it. And I don't care to. That's the good thing about books is you take what you want from them. Overall, the Stormlight Archive it's a fantasy. People get magical powers and use them to defeat the bad guys. But the way that they get their magical powers, the characters in this book get their magical powers from this world is through self-knowledge, enlightenment, confidence, emotional growth. And so as these characters come to know themselves, come to accept themselves, and the things that they consider flaws are actually literal superpowers when reframed in a different context, then they get their magical powers. And so that is really overt in this one. Basically, outright says, you got to overcome these things that you consider weaknesses within you in order to gain the highest level of the power. When you simplify it like that, it's really on the nose, but actually it's nice to have that emotional growth in all the characters. We have one main character who has depression, another one who has massive trauma in their childhood, actually multiple with massive trauma in their childhood, one with dissociative identity disorder, one character is clearly coded autistic. And it's all framed in a way that even though everybody has something that is inhibiting their confidence, like even the prince, the son of the guy who's now king, who is literally the embodiment of privilege, has these issues that he has to overcome where he's like, well, I have all these things, but I'm not my dad. So they've all got something to overcome and they all do that and it's all lovely and they all get their character arc and it's nice. And then shit totally hits the fan at the end, as you would expect, because this is only halfway through the whole series. There's going to be a break for a couple of years, 3 or 4 years before the next one comes. So it's an ending, but it's not the ending. And so I was really mad at the end because it was so good and I wanted more. And if I can't give a higher praise to a book than that. So ultimately, I enjoyed this. And if you were interested in this, you will have already read the first 4, I'm sure. Don't be scared by how long they are because they are broken up into mini books. And then each of these mini books has 3 or 4 short stories in between each one. So it doesn't feel long. It just looks long. I mean, it is a big story, but it's not a story that you have to hold in your head all at once. Not something like, I was looking around for big classic books on my shelf, like The Name of the Rose or The Magic Mountain, that sort of chunk, Bleak House. You don't have to hold it all in your brain. It's not that in-depth. Today is day 6 of a heat wave where I live. It's going to be 40 degrees again, which in American is over 100. And I've turned off all the wind devices so that I could have good audio here. So I'm feeling it. All right, so I read that book and that is the only book that I've read since we last talked. Having said that, I have been reading books. I am currently reading physically Medieval Scriptorium, Making Books in the Middle Ages by Sarah J. Charles. This was a gift from my mum and I love it. I'm having so much fun. I'm about halfway through. My favourite things so far, oh, we're on a pretty picture. It's illustrated. Like I showed you all this before. It's illustrated with the examples, but the weight of the paper, I reckon it's about 120 GSM and it's just freaking nice to read a physical book with quality, thick paper and really nice font. The actual book is good too. The premise is that we, and when I say we, I say pop culture, has an image of what a medieval scriptorium looks like. A scriptorium is, well, is it? Is it the place where monks in monasteries hand wrote manuscripts? When I say that, there wasn't always monks, there was nuns, but also secular lay people wrote for money. Did they write in a particular space or did they just have to write? That's what this book is exploring. Did they write in a particular room, the scriptorium, or more evidence has come out that scriptoriums didn't exist and really it was just in the cloisters or even outside, which would really only be possible along the Mediterranean where it's warmer. Just that sort of thing. Did they have a table or did they have to sit on the floor at a writing board? The chapter I'm reading now is what constitutes a manuscript? What are we talking about? So how is parchment made? Where does it come from? Where does the ink come from? The gold foil? How do you make a quill? All of which I know, but it's interesting and it puts it in the context, especially if you don't know. I'm just laughing to myself saying all these words because scriptorium really just means the desk where you write. So it's not like, now we think of it as a room, but that's not where the word comes from. Manuscript literally comes from manu, which is hand, and handwriting. I did learn, and I'm sure I knew this before and had forgotten, that an illuminated manuscript just means that it has been decorated with gold or silver foil, whereas a manuscript with decorations is not illuminated if it doesn't have the metallic elements. So I've learned something. I've learned many things. It made me actually really want to read The Name of the Rose, and I did get a copy of the movie. Somebody put me onto a copy and I made Ash watch it, and he was not that keen on it until the sex scene. So I guess that's why they included it in the movie. Anyway, I had fun and it scratched the itch, and I don't think I want to read the book again because I've got the story back in my head. Anyway, so that's in progress. I'm enjoying it. I'm about halfway through and having fun. What else am I reading? Let me get my list. On my Kindle, I'm nearly done. I've got about half an hour left, the Kindle reckons. I'm reading Days of Shattered Faith by Adrian Tchaikovsky. It is the third in the Tyrant Philosophers series. This is a very loosely connected series where there is a character who has been in all three books, but the setting is different, the main characters are different, but it's all in the same world. So the first one was about a city that was being occupied by a colonizing force, and then the second was about people in the army of this colonizing force, against the other main army they're fighting a war with, and the city that's caught in the middle of that. And then this third book is about a city on the outskirts who is being courted by both sides of this war, but then they have a succession crisis. The king, he's not called the king, but the king dies, and then the two remaining brothers have a civil war over who should be king next, and then the implications of that with using the Palatine, which is the army and civilization, using them to help win this civil war, and then have invited them in, and the implications of that. But also, you know, what do colonizing forces do in a city? They pillage, they steal your cultural artifacts. They generally, it's not a good time for the conquered. And also not a good time for people within the Palatine as well. Because this is on the outskirts, people are trying to escape the army, and this was a safe place on the outskirts, and now it's not. So I'm having a good time. I can't tell you any more than that without massive spoilers, but if you have enjoyed the first two, this is again a different spin, but along the same lines of, oh, and also a big thing in these ones, which is what drew me to it in the first place, is the Palatine is hell-bent on eliminating religion because it's a cult and it's against their idea of perfection. They're trying to bring perfection to the world. And so they're trying to eradicate religion. But in the second book, two gods really got a stranglehold on the army. And in this one, this is the implications of what happened when people start reviving the gods. So that's really interesting too. So I think the gods are going to come into it in a big way in this last 5% of the book or so that I've got to go. Having fun. And finally, I am listening to, although I have ordered this book from my local indie bookshop and it's on its way, I hope. I'm listening to Why Marx Was Right by Terry Eagleton. I've read Terry Eagleton before, probably on that part of my bookshelves. A book about how to English degree. I can't remember what it was called. How to read literature. Same. And so this one is, let me find the blurb for you. In this book, Terry Eagleton takes issue with the prejudice that Marxism is dead and done with, taking 10 of the most common objections to Marxism, that it leads to political tyranny, that it reduces everything to the economic, that it is a form of historical determinism, and so on. He demonstrates in each case what a woeful travesty of Marx's own thought these assumptions are. That is what is happening. Each chapter is an assumption about Marxism and then a refutation of that with receipts. I have not read any Marx except in the context of my history degree, where Marxism is a theory to apply to historical sources, a way of thinking about things that happened in the past, a framework. So I'm very, very loosely familiar with Marxism. This book is good if you are not familiar with Marxism, because it's like, okay, here's what people say about it, here's what Marx says about it, here's how it could work in practice, because of course what Marx is writing is a theory. And in fact, this is the reason that I bought a copy of the book, is because there's things that I need to go back and read with my eyes and my brain, not just listen to. But something that came up last night was that these are the goals, and the goals aren't always achievable, but it's always the direction in which you're looking. So maybe Marx's idea of a socialist utopia, which I don't think he ever had that idea, but for argument's sake, a socialist utopia cannot happen because of humans. But that can always be the goal towards which we strive and direct our thoughts and actions, even if it's completely unachievable in reality. And I like that. That makes sense to me. So anyway, I'm having fun with this. I'm learning about Marxist thought. I'm learning about arguments against Marxist thought. It's interesting. It's very interesting and definitely readable and provides enough context so that you can go and look at it for yourself if you want. Anyway, hopefully next week I'll have the book and I can have some more in-depth thoughts. Depends how long it takes my bookstore to get it in. Finally, the fun bit is things that I have acquired. Let me grab the pile. I have this huge pile on my lap. Let's talk about books that I have acquired. Now, all of these except one I have already read. Don't be too impressed. The third of these collector's editions of The Expanse. This is Abaddon's Gate and Orange Spread. That is the only different thing. Everything else, oh, it'll have actually the artwork inside the dust jacket. So these are all essentially the same. The end papers are the same, just a different colour. I'm hoping they do all the books in this collector's edition, but it's not looking likely. Now, last time I held one of these up, it was pointed out to me that that is the cover art of the original books, which makes sense. Abaddon's Gate is, well, I can't really tell you because we're getting really into spoiler territory, aren't we? This is the third one, so we've had the introduction of all our fave characters. And because I am rereading this as a buddy read with some people who are new to The Expanse, and this is the next one to be reading, I'm not going to tell you anything more. Let's get the buddy read started. Anyway, it's gorgeous. It's on my shelf and I'm hoping they do more of those collector's editions. Next up, we have The Notebook, A History of Thinking on Paper by Roland Allen. I talked about this already. I loved it. And it ended up being a Christmas present from my mum. Thank you, Mum. I'm so glad to have a real copy because I had so much fun with this one. Then I have How to Take Smart Notes How to Take Smart Notes, One Simple Technique to Boost Writing, Learning and Thinking by Sonki Aaron. The call number here is 001.42, so it's under information, and it is research systems. Now this has been recommended, not to me personally, just, you know, I consume a lot of productivity media on the internet, and this is recommended from the productivity guru life coach side of YouTube, and also the academic productivity side of podcasts that I listen to. So when it came from both corners, and I had already been keen, and you know I Had a Life book, it was time. Have I read it? No. I will though. Would you like a blurb? Where are my eyes? This is based, it says it's, hang on, where's our reflection? Based on the principle of the Zettelkasten, which I've heard of, and I couldn't tell you what that is. So this one's another gift from my mom. Isn't that a pretty cover? It's The Dead of Winter, Demons, Witches, and Ghosts of Christmas. So sadly, it probably will wait till next Christmas before I read it, and I want to get into the horror, cozy mood of winter. The call number here is 394.2663, which is Christmas. Under social sciences, customs, etiquette, and folklore, and then down to Christian holidays, Christmas. I'll just read you the blurb that I got off the internet. When you think about Christmas, you likely picture mangers, glowing fireplaces, sweet carolers, and snow-blanketed hills. But behind all this bright magic, there's something much darker lurking in the shadows. In the dead of winter, Cambridge-trained historian Sarah Clegg delves deep into the folklore of the Christmas season in Europe, detailing the way its terrifying and often debaucherous past continues to haunt and entertain us now in the 21st century. So it's got chapters like The Lord of Misrule, Old Gods, Christmas Witches, Punishing the Wicked. It just sounds awesome. So that will put me in the Christmas mood next year, I reckon. How to Read Literature Like a Professor. This is the 3rd edition by Thomas C. Foster. I don't know if I talked to you about this, but I read the 2nd edition late last year. It was on Kindle Unlimited, so it was essentially free, and I enjoyed it so much. I highlighted it so much that every day in my Readwise thing, let me tell you about Readwise. Readwise is an app that harvests all my Kindle highlights, and then I can physically highlight from real books as well and add them to the app. And then every day it surfaces 5 of those highlights that I've done just to remind, and I like to do that every day. And nearly every day is a highlight from this book, the 2nd edition of this book. I took a lot out of it. It does what it says on the tin. It says, a lively and entertaining guide to understanding literature from The Great Gatsby to The Hate You Give. If you know somebody starting an English degree, so highly recommend. It's about how to spot the themes and what the symbolism is doing, and how to know where stuff's coming from. Like, when I say stuff, I mean the ideas that an author has put in a text come from somewhere. There's no new ideas, it's just recycling them and remixing them, and how to spot that. Things that I could immediately put into practice. There was a section here about rain and characters who walk through rain. The rain is often a cleansing thing, but it also creates mud, and then what if they get mud and dirty? Like, all the symbolism of that. And then that literally happened in the book that I read next. And so I was like, oh, I see what you've done here, and I see the symbolism. Even if that wasn't consciously intended by the author, that's the vibes of the story. And that is what an English degree teaches you how to spot. But if you don't have and don't want that kind of formal training, this is really good. I had a lot of fun, but I've also read a lot of how to read literature books, and I enjoy them all. The call number here is 808.20241111, which is basically literary criticism. Finally, these ones all go together. This is Alana, the First Adventure, In the Hand of the Goddess, The Woman Who Rides Like a Man, and Lioness Rampart, which are all by Tamara Pierce. They're called The Song of the Lioness Quartet. And this is the 40th anniversary reissue. I love these books so much. They're something that I acquired from Scholastic Book Club when I was in high school. And the story of Alana just really sticks with me to the point where I am 42 years old and I still think, what would Alana do in this situation? They were first published, the first one was published in 1983. I would say the first one which is that one, very children's, very middle grade. It's about a girl who has a twin brother and their father sends them off to their respective castle to train to be a knight and convent to train to be a wife. I was talking too much and it cut me off. Basically, these twins, they don't want to go to where they're being sent respectively. So Alana convinces everyone in her life except her dad, who doesn't know, to let her pretend to be a boy and go to the castle and train to be a knight. She wants to be a knight. Her brother has no interest in being a knight. He wants to be a mage. And so he goes off to the convent and then to magic school. And so it is that coming of age, going to school, learning who you are, finding family story for children. And because I read it as a child, it stuck with me. They progressively go on where Alana does become a knight. She does find her family. She then exiles herself from the castle because everyone found out that she's not a dude, and then has to, learn and grow and emotionally mature and then come back after completing a quest to a hero's return to help save the kingdom. Of its time, yes. Influential, fuck yes. In fact, the blurb on all of these is by Sarah J. Maas, which I don't love, but there you go. And also, when you put all the covers together, it forms a crest. So I bought them simply because, can you see my Alanas there? I only have one of my original cover left, so these ones all match. All of the books that Tamara Pierce wrote in this world of Tortall were influential to me as a teenager. That's my update for January. Thank you for watching. As you can see, you didn't miss out much. I just acquired things in hard copy that I had already read, and I finished literally one book at the start of January. But we should have more to talk about in the future, especially since hopefully all the drama of January has died down. Thanks for hanging out with me, and we will talk about books soon, I hope. Bye.